Good afternoon to some and good evening to others. Good morning to even others. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second Ethics in Representation panel. I'm your moderator, Tanesha Nicole, and today I am joined by Edward Hong, who is the founder of the PGM VO List, VOC co-founder Jazzy Frizzle, VO actor Marcus Rothenberg, and our very, very special guest, which gives us all the tinglies and the sparkles, voiceover animation director Ashley Nguyen DeWitt. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Come on into the room. So, if you were here last time, which I hope you were, if you were not, go back and watch that recording because you missed out on some good stuff. Although the entertainment industry continues to move forward with more authentic casting and representation in voiceover work, there is still so much more work that needs to be done before we have parity and before equity is reached, because there's a difference between giving somebody an opportunity but not booking them for it. There's an equity issue that's there, and that's what we're really going for. So here's how we're going to do things tonight. During the first hour of our panel, we'll have what is sure to be a very lively discussion. As if you've already seen, this is how we act, this is what we're going to do. And it's going to be around the impact of authentic casting, and then what organizations can do to support working PGM, people of the global majority, voice actors. As we roll into that second hour, we will roll into a live Q&A. So please utilize the Q&A chat box to ask your questions. As a note, as you're typing in your questions and you're chatting in with folks, please know that there are varying opinions, that's a nice way to put it, on this topic, and that things can get heated and things can escalate quite quickly, right? But respectful discourse is both acceptable and it is expected, okay? However, little asterisk, please keep all comments, questions, interactions professional, respectful, and tactful. Abuse of any kind, bullying, derogatory or inflammatory language is strictly prohibited. My block button is strong, as the people on Twitter. So moderators and admins who are watching in the background and helping us with the Q&A and so forth, reserve the right to remove any, A-N-Y with all caps, attendee who does not adhere to this request. Full stop. We good? I'm pausing to acknowledge understanding. I know I can't see y'all, but y'all can see me. All righty, before we jump into it, because this is from Voices of Color and PGM VO List, we want to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are currently on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We are privileged and grateful to live and work and host this event from traditional and unceded territory of the Chumash, the Gabrielino Tongva peoples for Los Angeles, and the Atacapa Ishak, please forgive me if I butchered that. If I get a pronunciation wrong, please feel free to send me a message. People of Houston. We encourage our PGM VO List community and all of our partners throughout the VO industry to reflect on the effects of residential schools and colonialism on Indigenous families, communities, and engage in reconciliation meaningfully. Gives us all the feels, right? All right, let's get started. So if my gorgeous panel would take themselves off of mute, do a quick intro. Ashley, I want to leave you for last because you are our special guest and you are new to us. They used to us and what we do, but that's okay. I want to intro anyway. So let's start from the top with Edward.
Hi, I'm Edward Hong. I'm located in Los Angeles, California. I am the founder of the PGM VO List and otherwise known as the Very Loud Shit Talker on Twitter.
Yes. Amen and hallelujah. I'll drink to that. Jazzy Frizzle. I have to get used to saying that.
It's okay, you know, it's a fun time. Hi, I'm Jazzy. I am a voice actor, co-founder of Voices of Color. I wear a lot of hats, I do a lot of things, and I love a little bit of petty here and there. I'm not gonna lie. So, hi everybody. Well, kind of forever.
Love it. A little bit of petty. Petty is my favorite color. I do love me some petty.
Petty and pink.
Petty and pink, and petty keeps me pretty. There it is. Circling around to Marcus.
Hi, I'm Marcus Rothenberg, also known as Petty Pendergrass. I am a voice actor based out of Central Illinois, Springfield specifically. I also talk mad shit on Twitter. So yeah, that's me. That's about all I got. I haven't founded anything.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna be in that boat with you because I haven't found it anything either. I'm Tanesha Nicole. I am also says Tanesha Graham at the bottom. Why? Because I have a stage name. But you can find me normally on Twitter along with Jazzy and Marcus and Edward talking mad shit. Starting a couple Twitter beefs, but we're starting good trouble. I don't just go out giving verbal skibbity paps just for the hell of it. Okay, sometimes I do. It depends on how I wake up and how petty I'm feeling that day. But a voice actor based out of Houston, Texas, and now all the Springfield, give me all the sparkles and all the jazz fingers that you can give for Ashley Nguyen DeWitt.
Yeah, vocal skibbity pads is now my favorite. Oh man, it's so good. Hi y'all, I'm Ashley Nguyen DeWitt. I am an animation, casting, and voice director. I'm also a voice actor and a musician. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I could further introduce myself with more stuff, but that's who I am.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that because I think some of the questions that I have for you are going to kind of delve into a little bit of who you are, what you do, but who you are and where you are in this process in this VO realm. So thank you all for your intros. Let's dive into it. So Ashley, talk a little bit about what your role is in a production. What is it that you do exactly?
So I am a casting and voice director, and what that means is that I would be typically hired by studio production to find the right actors to fill the roles for like a series or project as needed. So to be more specific about that, like I'll get a role, I'll send out auditions, I'll get them back, and I will listen and select who I feel is best fit for the character, and I will send a list to the production, and then they get to listen and choose who they believe they would like to either call back or hire for that specific role. And yeah, like if a character is a bit more specific, like in terms of representation, I also do research on actors. And that is something that I do to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to find the best balance of authenticity and talent. So yeah.
I'm a little concerned when you say doing research on actors because I've been out there bad on Twitter. Awesome, thank you for that. So have you had the chance to work with anybody that's here on our panel?
Not directly yet. No, I have not had the chance to. Not yet.
The word in that is yet. Absolutely. So as you talk about, that you're a casting director, you're also, a musician and an actor. What has been your experience as a person of a global majority in the animation industry? Because I know that each genre is a little different.
Yeah. It's been what you think it would be. I mean, I've worked in all sorts of different rooms at this point. I've been in animation for quite some time. I would say when I first started in animation specifically, the team that I worked with was diverse and mostly women. So that was a really cool like first team to work with. But I would say that the productions that I worked on were quite homogenous in terms of I was a casting coordinator, talent relations coordinator. So what that means is I would be in the control room side of things during a record. And sometimes I would be the only person of the global majority in the room, which is tricky because I'm sure we've all felt this at some point. You become the racial thermometer in the room. Which is a lot of pressure and uncomfortable when you're in a lower level position. If anyone who's wondering what a racial thermometer is basically the person in the room who is a gauge of what you can and cannot get away with in terms of representation, be it the way that you speak to someone and or what is written on that paper. And so that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to become a voice director. And a casting director, so that I could like be in a position to help diverse stories be authentically told and to advocate in those moments. So that's kind of been like my starting experience, but now like I've been in rooms like for Ada Twist Scientist, which is the show that I did for Netflix with the Obama's production company Higher Ground. And like now that I've been in rooms like Ada, which was run by myself and the showrunner Cary Grant, who's also Black. And that was such a wild experience because like I can't tell you how many times someone, an actor, a parent, whoever has mentioned how much it's meant for them to see Carrie and I there running that room because it is the first time that they've seen that. Or so I've seen things slowly change, and that's been my experience generally in this space. And I will say that I've been championed by a lot of people. I'm a lucky person who has found some really great people who have guided me and given me a chance, taken a chance on me in order to open up the voice directing and casting space to someone to the global majority. So that has been my experience.
That is one, absolutely amazing, just the work that you've done and how you've come up. And I think all of us can very much relate to being the only one of anything that is in a room, right? So I want to open up to my panelists and talk, because each of you come from a little bit of a different background. I know, Edward, you've done some ADR directing and so forth with Jazzy, you know, with you being the co-founder of Voice of Color. Marcus, you've been out in the trenches like with me with auditioning and so forth. Tell me a little bit about, and again, you can say this however you see fit, take yourself off of mute, what it's been like for you being the only one of anything, whatever that may be, in a room in voiceover. What's that been like for you? Who wants to go first? Don't make me voluntold somebody. I will voluntold.
You don't have to voluntold. Let me change first. Real life.
Hold on.
Oh, do you need to see it?
Hold
Sorry.
on.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and there's the petty. You feeling it today? I like it.
It's that's how it feels. On the voice acting side, I am so used to at this point getting auditions just for Black women. There was, yeah, you know, like and I know I mentioned this before, but it's like it's become this multi-leveled battle, you know, in like a video game in multiple levels. Like you get to a point where it's like, great, now we're getting more authentic casting. It's awesome, but then it's kind of like that's leading us to being pigeonholed, and so we're only called upon to meet that authentic need or, you know, that diverse need. So then the next step in that is open casting calls, you know, all those ones that are just like, yeah, we just need a voice, sounds this age, feminine or masculine, and then that can literally go to anybody. There was a company that I was freelancing for that would only send me Black women auditions, or even if the specs didn't specifically say Black, like we're looking for an African-American woman talent. If the references were Black, it would come in.
Viola Davis on it?
Yeah. Oh God, we don't talk about that. We all know if it's comedic or anything Black, it's Tiffany Haddish is the reference, or if it's a serious or dramatic piece, it is Viola Davis. Okay, it's just that's just the way it is.
Those are the only two Black women in all of Hollywood.
That's it. You know, it's
so
fine.
true.
I don't know other ones.
Oh gosh.
I'm kidding. I'm joke. What I lack in height, I make up for in spite.
No, that's okay. We love it. We love to see it. So I think it's really frustrating to know that that's the only reason why you're there.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so am I only good enough? I remember in trying to make my case of like, hey, send me more open auditions. I'm like, hi, I'm also a woman. I can voice women things. Generally.
Did they have to like, yeah, okay.
That's good for you. Good
yeah.
for you. Here's some more Tiffany Haddish voice matching auditions. Oh boy.
What about you, Marcus?
Take myself off mute.
Take yourself off mute?
Yeah, I don't get a lot of Tiffany Haddish, I'll say that much. But you do experience a lot of that same pigeonholing in a very annoying way. And also being biracial, they like, as for Ashley's comment on the racial thermometer thing, they try that with me, but they think it's safer because they'll do that thing where it's like, well, you're not like really black.
You're not black,
So-
black, right?
So we can,
Yeah.
you know, pump it. Could you do it more urban? Like,
Yo, I hate that word.
I hate that. I
Yeah,
actually
get
pushed
that.
back and told an agent flat out. I said, "Can you explain to me? Can you explain to me really quickly what the client means by an urban read?"
oh, I tell them, give me an example. I'm like, you say it, you do it. Let me hear
William
how you do it.
Shatner. I like that.
And
Yeah.
they're oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, and then the coordinator in the background is like, no, don't do it. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like no. Oh, and they did it.
Yeah, let me hear your take,
Oh.
and then I'll go from there. But
Mm.
it's that thing where it's just they try to pigeonhole you into certain things. And when I was first submitting for talent agencies, like sending my commercial reel out there, sending my character reel out there, I heard back from one very, very quickly, and I was super excited. Like, oh man, yeah, hey, I'm gonna get signed with a talent agency if this meeting goes well. They opened the email saying, "You fit exactly a demographic we've been looking for." And I was kind of like, what do you mean by that? Like, could you explain that? And they said, well, we're looking to have more people on the roster that are racially ambiguous so they can play more roles. It's like,
I know you
I'm
lying.
not racially ambiguous. I'm my race, and that's it. So I'm not sure
Wow.
what you want from me out of this, but I don't think this is going to be a good fit. And I think we see this happen a lot with, and I love the man, don't think I'm coming after him, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, where people are like, yeah, he's tan, but he's not black, but he's not white. So he can just be Egyptian, right? For this thing, or he
Have
can
they
just
not
be.
seen his daddy? Did they not see his daddy? That is a whole black man.
But then they do that thing constantly where it's like, well, we need someone to fit the spec of kind of brown. So you can do that, right? You're not actually brown. You're just kind of brown. You can do this. That's perfect. And you
Quasi
get
brown.
that
Okay.
across the board all the time. And then my vocal references that they'll do a lot, they think they're slick with it. They'll give 2 black guys and then 2 white guys. And that's the vocal references. And they're never anything similar. So it's like, yeah, it sounds like a mix between Idris Elba and Ryan Reynolds. So if you could do that, I'm like, that's not.
What kind of Frankensteining is that?
Also, sign me up. What?
Yeah, those 2 are. I need Deadpool Heimdall is what I need for you to match for this spec. And yeah,
Oh,
so really just piggybacking on what Jazzy said, it's just you get a lot of that pigeonholing, and we can play other stuff. I can do a lot more than racially ambiguous tan person.
wow. Edward.
I'll provide my perspective. I mean, it's similar to like as an actor, like the kind of roles we get that, things are getting better, but then it's kind of like when you're the only person or when they want the only token diversity role, these kind of issues do come up. My perspective recently has been like seeing things from the English dubbing, the ADR director side. And in that world, there's definitely, like the actor world, there's a push for more of that in that specific region, considering how much it's been blowing up the past 2 years alone with all the Netflix and especially Disney Plus buying almost every like TV shows out there around the world. And so there is a push for the authenticity in terms of the directors and also to translators, adapters, and those positions as well. But it is still very predominantly white, like for the vast majority. So when that happens is that there are mindsets that I think needs to be broken, and it's kind of hard when you try to push for that. For example, let's say it's a Korean drama and it's like you have these Korean names and places. And so I have this belief that because our world is more globalized more than ever, where we are, in terms of what is considered authentic, we're starting to understand what that really means. And that applies to pronunciations. Like for the longest time, we believe that anglicized pronunciation is the right pronunciation. Like anything you say, that's the right way. You know, Dan, like whatever, how they say it, yet they expect all the other global majority people to say the English names properly. Like you need to say that name, that British name, that Australian name, or whatever name, or some name, that has to be said perfectly. That's the expectation that we have to say their names, but they can say whatever they want to our names and just completely butcher that up. So I've had the issues with sometimes with people where it's just like they insist it has to be the anglicized pronunciations, and I'm like, do you realize how terrible it sounds when you go when you're saying like any name, what especially of that culture in a country, and we have the internet. If you don't know how a name is pronounced, like even like doing the land pronunciation, all you have to do is just Google it. Just Google the name, pronounce, and just put in pronunciation. You will get the authentic pronunciation of that name or place. Like ignorance is not an excuse anymore. We have the internet at our fingertips, and yet I feel like companies and other directors act like we're in the 1990s, like they don't know how. Like, how do you pronounce it? It's too hard for these people. I don't know. Google, just Google that
I
shit.
mean, it's
So
not that hard, right?
it's
Do your
not that
research.
hard.
It's a job. Work.
Research.
I mean, you have
So
to. Yeah.
I appreciate when companies like they give us like there's one company I work with, they gave us like a pronunciation sheet guide of like this is how you say it in that native language way. So I've appreciated directors, even if they're not global majority, if they're white directors, they'd be like, okay, we're gonna follow this to a T. And understandably, not everyone's gonna nail it. Like some of them are really gonna be really hard, like trying to pronounce Mandarin names or places can be very difficult. Mandarin is probably one of the most difficult languages to pronounce, but I always want people to like aim for it, just go for it, as opposed to just willy-nilly just say whatever they think it means and just be like completely wrong with that.
No, completely
So
feel that.
yeah, so I think just like in that world, it can be hard being the only person pushing for that kind of thing, because then it can be perceived that you are the troublemaker, you are the one who's being difficult, and we all know what it's like, whether it's global majority or as women or as like LGBTQ, when you're the only person and you're like, I don't think that's quite right, I think we can do better. And they're like, why do you have to slow things down? You're slowing production down, you're making things so much harder for everyone. It's hard. And then so I know a lot of times we tend to, you know, through no fault, we tend to cave into pressure. We're like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be that person. And we've done it.
Right.
We've all kind of been like, okay, I don't want to push any further because your job might be on the line. You might get fired the next thing that comes out of your mouth. And I've seen it happen to too many people I know. But I think now it's like I've trying to be like, you know what is more important? Is it your job, or you're trying to just like please the masses, or your integrity? Like your integrity that we can do better than this, and we are in a time that this is the time to say these things and just own and just hold your line to it. So I think that's my specific experience. It's just like, you know, trying to battle that, but then also understanding like, you know, where do they resist most and how do you navigate around that? You know, I'm not exactly the wittiest or funniest person, so my tendency can be very aggressive. So I've seen other people accomplish this miraculous wonders, and they were just so funny and witty. And I'm like, that's something I want to learn. You know, how do you make them like laugh and be aware of their ignorance, but not make them feel terrible? Because I do realize white people, most white people, they're so sensitive, especially allies. Like when you point out something that's a little off, oh man, it can be a whole different conversation. And sometimes I feel like I have more difficult conversations with my friends, my allies, than with like straight out ignorant racist folks, because then you have like a much wider berth. Like, okay, you're like, all right, fine, I get your point, I don't like it, but I get it. When it comes to allies, it's so challenging because
they change the narrative.
Because it's like you're asking them to like learn a little bit more, like, you know, to say, hey, you're not racist, but you can fix this thought. And so I think it's just like I always try to tell them, think of it like a software always needs to be updated. Like, you know, it's never perfect, so we are all softwares, so just be the next version.
It might as well be Windows 98. That thing has never been right.
Yeah. So yes, that is my experience, especially in the English dubbing ADR director land.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Edward. For our folks that are on a panelist, not our panelists, but our attendees, when we're talking about anglicized pronunciations, my nephew, who is 5, his name is Zahir, Zahir, Arabic, right? Many people are like, oh, how do you pronounce it? Oh, Zaire. I was like, no, Zaire is a country. That's a country. His name is Zahir. Or my name is Tanesha. They're like, oh, Tunisia. I'm like, no, that too is a country. It's Tanesha. And they're like, oh, how do you spell it? It's phonetic. This doesn't seem difficult. It's phonetic. Exactly, Jazzy, that piece. So totally get it. So it's those little things, but those little things matter. As my nephew gets ready to go to school, and I want people to pronounce his name properly. I want them to learn what it is, instead of saying, okay, I'm just going to call you Z. I'm just going to call you T. No, what you're going to call me is Tanesha. That is the name that I want to be addressed by. And then they get offended because I want to be addressed by my name. Who would have thunk it that I want to be addressed by the name of which was given to me at my birth or of my choosing? If I decide I want to change my name to Orangelo, that's my business. You call me what I said I wanted to be called.
The audacity.
I don't say the unmitigated dog. How dare you want to be called by your name and what you want to be called by?
Listen, in terms of allies, I'm telling y'all, if y'all, I'll say it forever and ever, if y'all don't watch Atlanta, you guys need to watch Atlanta. It is a wonderful, wonderful show. It's a little hyperbolic in, examples, but it's actually like perfect. There is an episode where they talk about white guilt. And that's exactly what it is when you're trying to communicate to an ally what they've done wrong. And they're just like, but I'm doing this for you. And you're kind of like, when they go out of their way, like the setup in the specific episode was that Lakeith Stanfield, wonderful, actor in the show, by the way. Lakeith Stanfield was just talking to a lady. She says something that in no way could be taken wrong. And then this white person who was behind him heard the conversation, was like, I heard what she said to you. That's, that's terrible. It's very racist of her. And he's just kind of like, and then later on it goes on and he's telling all the other people like, yeah, she said all this. And they're all just like, I don't know how you're not like so hurt right now. I don't know how you make it through it. And he's just kind of like, that's not what happened, but okay. So it's,
I mean, we all felt we all felt it. I mean, in 2020 and 2021, with everything that's happening, like, I'm sure we all got the white guilt text messages, at least one of the, I'm so sorry that this is happening to you.
I'm just checking.
I'm like,
how do you
I don't know how you can deal with this.
To me,
angry all the time. I just don't. How do you make it through?
Yeah, or
by ignoring you. That's how. Please shut up.
The trying to cancel Robert Downey Jr. for Tropic Thunder.
That movie's great.
Tropic
I don't
Thunder
care.
was trash, so you have to give it that.
Oh, divisive.
And this is where I get in trouble for the
way
city.
opposite runs there.
Right. His role had a point, and then like white people went left and was just like, no, I don't know how you're not offended. I was like, that was the point of his role was to be
in
like.
In that movie, he's not making fun of black people. He's making fun of you. He's making fun of white people.
Who play black people.
Who play black people, yeah.
Speaking of white people who play black people.
Ooh, I knew it was coming.
Wow, that was a good transition.
You teed me right on up there. You teed me right on up.
That was really good.
Ashley, in your role, have you seen a push in the right direction as it relates to authenticity and representation within the industry that doesn't smack of tokenism?
Yeah. Yes, I have seen that there is a push to be more thoughtful about authenticity and like representation. And I do believe, like what I've seen, it's starting in like the writing process, which I feel like is a big deal. And honestly, I really think that that's where it all should start. And I mean, obviously, everything keeps changing. Like there's always room for improvement, and it's going to take a lot of time. It's not going to be instant. But I do feel, and I do feel like it's on the right track. Like I have been hired for projects that have not been Black specific. you know, like as a voice director, because there was a way, as we were talking earlier about tokenism and only being hired for African American roles or Black roles, Black women, all of that sort of thing. There was a point when I was starting in like the casting and voice directing space where I was like, I really want to be a voice director, but I also would love to direct all projects. And I mean, I am. So I have been hired to direct like things that aren't like culturally specific, which I really appreciate. And I do feel like there has been a push to just open opportunity in that sort of realm.
So what is your perfect state or your perfect process for casting authentically? Is it like Jazzy had mentioned before? Is it open casting calls to everyone, including PGM, you know, being given the opportunity to audition and be cast for what are written as white roles? I know this is very, very decisive. I will say, I'm not going to speak for everybody on the panel, but I personally have gotten into some verbal fisticuffs with some folks recently as this week in regards to that topic. And it's a little rough. I was very tactful.
Yeah. I mean, like, I wouldn't say perfect, but like my ideal process, right? My ideal process would be, again, would start with writing, right? It would start in development. That unless a project is culturally specific, like ethnicity or culture is a plot point or a motivation, that the character design wouldn't be finalized until after the cast is done. And so that when the audition goes out, it would just be open to everybody. And then it wouldn't matter about like that sort of thing. It would only matter about talent at that point. And then once you hire, then you finalize the character. Then you finalize what that character is. And if it goes out as a specific character, and you open it up and you find someone else, change the design.
That part.
But I also understand that that's a lot of money. It's an ideal process, but it would like change the process.
Yeah. But I feel like it would change the process for the better.
I think so, but right? That's like 100 years worth of process to undo. But it would start in development, and it would start from the ground floor.
So let's open it up to the rest of the panel. Jazzy, you were vehemently shaking your head. What are your thoughts or anything you want to add to that?
Repeat the question one more time, because I got so caught up in what Ashley was saying. I was like, yes, that's it.
So it was around about, ideal, not perfect, but the ideal process for casting authentically, is that being open to including all PGM being able to audition for and book for roles that are, quote, written as white or traditionally not people of color?
Yes. So again, I completely agree with Ashley's ideal process. It starts in development and it should just be like smooth sailing from there. But in the current state of things, I've mentioned this before, we're playing catch up right now. We're trying to catch up in the industry and with diversity, right? Because in an ideal world, diversity wouldn't even be a word because it's authentic throughout the board. Movies and shows have casts that look like you're walking down the street, right? Like it's not majority white. So we're playing catch up at this point. So yes, PGM can audition for white roles because as it stands, there aren't an equal amount of white roles versus PGM roles. So what are we supposed to do? Take this 10% that we have in media and then just all fight for that while the 90% is still majority white? Like it doesn't seem fair. So that's why, like, on the scale of things, yes, PGM can audition for white roles. White people cannot audition for PGM roles. You guys already have majority. Why do you need to dip into the pool, right? Like it doesn't need to happen. So again, until that process in the beginning, in the writing room, in development, it completely shifts the industry where it is authentic across the board, I say, yeah.
Marcus, Edward?
The only thing I would chime in with that is just like, it's going to be the age-old argument and the pushback, and this will happen as we continue to see more initiatives for inclusiveness, and then there's always going to be pushback, especially from so a lot of white people, in terms of like, why can't we do those roles, especially voice acting, because it's like it's just the voice, you don't see it, you just hear it, you just see it on screen. And so in that case, it should, there are people I've known who were like, they're all for like on-camera diversity, because it's like, it's what you see, but then like, why does it apply for voiceover? Because it's just the voice. Who really cares about it? And I would say, regardless of what you see or hear, it's about opportunities. And so it's like, in an ideal world, like as Jazzy was saying, the ideal world is where like resources like QueerVox, the Academy, or the LGBTQ, or like the PGM VO List, these kind of diversity initiatives, or like Ava DuVernay's Array, like, hiring behind the scenes crew that are women and people of color, global majority, that doesn't need to exist, like, because it's the norm. It's like, it's as natural as breathing. But for a lot of people, especially in the mainstream, for white people, like, that is not the case, because they're not conscious of that. It's like, and so it also applies to not just, race and sexual orientation. It also applies to disabilities. It also applies to things that if you're from a more privileged position, you will never think of like what others don't have. That will just never be the case. And so it's like, we all have it. It's like, I'm, cisgendered, able-bodied, so I am not conscious of like how sometimes my thoughts can perceive, or like, when I think like when it comes to LGBTQ or disabled, sometimes my comments to be like, oh, it comes from a very able-bodied, hetero, cisgendered perspective.
Right.
And so it's just like when I mentioned earlier about software updating, that's what it is. You just have to be aware of it. And it's not about like, I know so many people are like, oh, now we can't say shit anymore. Our thoughts are monitored, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's like, no, it's not about that. I think it's just like, this world, we are learning how truly vast this world is. And I think we as global majority had to learn how to deal with how vast, all the things we had to learn, whether it be like handling microaggressions of white people, or like, conversations about diversity. We had to learn that shit. White people never had to deal with this. Like it's you could go on your day at this day and age, you can go on it without learning anything about, inclusiveness, and you'll still be fine. Maybe people give you like, oh, that was a very insensitive comment, but you as the white person will have the privilege that nothing will really happen to you. Yes, I know people like they'll say quote unquote cancel, but all the people who have said some terrible shit or have done some terrible shit, they're still working. Like I see, who is it? Who's working right now?
Who just won a Grammy?
God, James Franco. He did some pretty, quite really terrible stuff with his students. He's working. He's got another movie coming up. So it's kind of like, and then obviously with him, Mel Gibson saying anti-Semitic comments. It's like, there's
Louis
no
CK doing what he did with, in front of folks, and
he got a Grammy. He won a
Grammy. I'm like, so he can. Okay. Oh, so that's where we are now. Okay, so, but if I get loud and wrong.
So I think going back to the question is just like, that would be the ideal state where it's like we can have that situation where it's just natural. It's just, and so it's like, then there's always a question of like talent and authenticity. And I think a lot of white people sometimes always think, well, you're just hiring for diversity's sake, but they're not really good people. So it's always like an insult to that, because I always try to flip the question and be like, well, why do we see so many mediocre white actors? Like, we see some terrible white actors who are given constant opportunities, even though they keep failing in the box office. So it's like, why do we give them the benefit of a doubt because they're white and that's okay? But as soon as like a global majority, whether it's a black actor, an Asian, an indigenous actor, if they bomb a movie, or it's on them, and we see it, like they don't get hired again, like for years.
Yeah, they go to straight to TV releases and things like that. They don't get the opportunity for points on the back end for box office, returns.
So the other thing I'm passionate about, which is a weird thing to be passionate about, I strive for when all of us can be successful while being mediocre as fuck. Like just like you just set the bare
That is
minimum and
noble.
people like, that's amazing. Good job for you. I'm like, awesome.
We
Yes,
get
I got a
presentation
4-season
memos.
renewal pickup. Awesome. Yeah. As opposed to like this expectation, we have to be like fucking amazing. And it's not to say that we should be complacent with mediocrity. And I'm not saying that because we should always be the best that we can be. But I think it's just like white people always are given the benefit of the doubt to be terrible and mediocre, and it's not the same is not given for us.
Yeah, they get the chance to fail up and we don't. Yeah, Marcus, you want to round us out on this one?
I agree with everything everyone said, honestly. You guys kind of all took it from me. One thing, like going off of what Ed said about like the white mediocrity thing, I saw, I don't remember if it was Twitter or Facebook, that it's inconsequential, but it was, is it good acting or is it just a white guy yelling? And that blew my fucking mind, because I was like, oh my God, that applies to so many movies, Oscar-worthy performances and things of that nature. And really, yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's just a white guy yelling, and people are like, oh, he's so passionate. Oh my God, he's such a good actor. Look at him. I know he's not crying or really acting. He's just screaming at the camera, but it's just so profound. And we get that all the time. And like what Jazzy said with it's us like kind of like trying to play catch up. As far as in this applies to many countries, but I'm speaking through the lens of someone that was born and raised in the United States. We live in a country that was stolen and founded by white people for white people.
Yeah.
We have a constitution that was written by white people for white men specifically.
White male landowners, get
Yeah.
that.
So literally the Constitution, when it was written, would not apply to anyone on this panel.
No.
And so since then, it laid the groundwork for everything that came after that was for the benefit of the white man, then later on the benefit of white people specifically, while the rest of us are just an afterthought. So as far as white people in casting, you're gonna have plenty of roles. I promise you, it is an ocean out there. Well, we're all just trying to even go for a swim, period. You have so many opportunities, and they're gonna keep getting thrown at you. Don't come over here. Like, we're just trying to catch up to what the vast majority of opportunities that you have. Just leave us be, please.
Yeah, it's the what about isms that really just kind of get me. Well, what about me? What about you?
But who will think of the plight of the white man? Not me. I don't
Not
care.
me.
You're fine.
I mean, yeah, it's like, what about you? Well, there's not going to be enough roles, but you have everything. You are the default. When you are the default, what, just like if you, let's say, we talk about, so, oh, you need to have, when I used to, do modern dance, oh, you need to have nude leotards. And they pick me out something pink. I'm like, that's not nude for me. Nude for me is going to be brown, the color of my skin. But that default, even Crayola was guilty of this for the longest, but they finally got it right with their Colors of the World crayon box. Now, mind you, yes, they have a Colors of the World crayon box that goes all the way from the very lightest shade of pink all the way to the darkest hue of black that you can find in between. And it comes not only just in crayons, but in colored pencils, markers, and it also has its own coloring book. Now, mind you, you have to buy that separate from the box of 64 or anything else like that.
What does the coloring book look like? Because I have concerns.
I'm gonna need you to go to Amazon. I'm gonna send you the link.
All right.
So in our Twitter DMs, I'm gonna send you the link, and I want you to look at this here coloring book.
I kind of don't want to.
Google it.
I think you should, because if I have seen it, I cannot be the only one. No, I should not suffer alone. Y'all gonna suffer with me because I'm gonna send it to you. And you're not gonna not look, because why? Because you're petty like I am, and you're curious, and you're a little nosy, so you're gonna look anyway. But yeah, it's the what about.
At the moment I asked the question.
That's okay. I got you, because I was gonna send it to you anyway. So you just helped me out, just like you teed me up previous question. You teed me up for this one. Be prepared for what's coming forth. Yeah, the what about isms get me. So it's not a question that we had listed, but I want to kind of stay in this vein a little bit. Ashley, have you had any of those kind of whataboutism moments in your casting process?
Where someone was like, "What about me?"
Uh-huh.
I was like, I don't let people get close to me like that. I'm kidding. No, I honestly, I haven't had that moment of what about isms for me, because I do my best to be a casting director that casts authentically, but also someone who tries to give as much opportunity as I am afforded to give. So, no one's come after me with a what about
I
yet.
love that. I
Can
am
can I
very
ask
much.
just a quick question, and somewhat in that same vein,
Yeah,
Come on.
if you don't mind, Ashley.
No,
of
come on,
course.
come on.
As far as casting, we always see this whenever a person of a global majority is cast for a role of something. We see it more typically in voiceover, where there will be a lot of backlash for casting a person of global majority, and people will just lose their absolute shit.
Mhm.
Do I'm going to ask this question: how do you deal with that if you do? Because I know if it was me, I would tell them shut the fuck up, kick rocks, and move on.
Yeah.
Is that what you do as well?
I mean, like, I haven't had that experience. But in my gut, I feel like I would just be like, go suck on an egg, go play in traffic. I don't know. I feel that the person who is hired for that job is the best person. Like, and that person beat out all the other people. So it's like it was a decision to put that person into that position. So, like, if that person was vetted by all the people who have to make the decisions to make that person who they are, like in that specific role, then like, who are you to say anything against it? You know, like, who are you, the empirical like assholes who are mad about that sort of thing? But so yeah, I would just tell them to go fucking themselves. Sorry, sorry about it.
No, don't apologize. That is the exact answer I wanted.
Like
No, there's nothing wrong with telling somebody to take a long jump off a short cliff.
also, and that's also like why also come after like a decision that is
Outside of the
like,
actor's
and also
purview.
it's like,
Yeah. People are weird.
and also know that there are a lot of decisions that come, like, it starts with me, but it doesn't end with me. I'm the gate, but I am not the king. I am not, the one making decisions in that sort of a thing. I can give the opportunity and like be like, this is, here you go. But when it comes down to, I am not the one that makes the final casting decision. And that's something that people need to know about casting directors too. It's
That's a
like,
good way to go to this next question, because I wanted to figure out how am I going to ask this, but you just, again, y'all are just teeing me up and making my job very easy. Does your job or your role as a casting director does it end with the casting, or does it bleed over to the production itself?
well, so I'm a casting voice director. So I tend to, for me, casting, it depends on how I'm hired, in what capacity. So if I'm just hired to cast a role, I'm done. But if I'm hired to cast like a project or a series, I'm typically there throughout the entire process and throughout the series, casting like incidental roles and until the process ends. And in voice director, I'm directing every episode that I'm hired for.
Okay.
But I like that too, because then I get to like have more hand in the creative process with those actors and the purview for like kind of the entirety of the vocal production of it.
Does that also include, let's say let's say you're going through a table read and you see some dialogue that is not quite kosher?
Mm-hmm.
Does that give you the ability to be able to go back to the writers and go, hey, this does not seem authentic. This seems like this is problematic. Are you able to do that as well?
Again, it depends on the room. It depends on the amount of I'm given. There are some productions who are just like, yes, Ashley, tell me all the things. And then there are some productions who are just like, okay.
Got you. Okay.
But there are some where I'm just like, how about we try it? Or we'll be in the room and I'll be like, that sounds weird. How about we try it this way? How about we try it with this person saying that? Because if that person says it like this, that might sound racist. I don't know. Let's try it like that. But like, that's kind of how I approach it.
I'm gonna pop over to Edward because I know Edward does, directing as voice directing as well. What about you, Edward? When it comes down to, let's say, does your job end, you mean bleed over into production? I know you throughout the series you've worked, but same question in regards to problematic translations, problematic, verbiage that is being used, or things that are stereotypes that really shouldn't be there. How do you handle that?
I think there are some things where like the company knows that because they hire, like, let's say it was a Korean show, if they know that like, oh, he's a Korean ADR director, that they kind of give me a little more leeway. Like, they're like, okay, if I see something that's wrong or if the translation is completely off, I'm going to change it completely. Like if the adaptation is like so far off that it's like they're not even on the same planet anymore, which I understand that like when it comes to adaptation, it's not going to be perfect from the raw translation because you have to make the mouth flaps work. But then there are times where it's like it's just completely off to the point that it doesn't even make any sense. So I would come in and just like rewrite that and just like and still try to make it work with the mouth flaps. And I think companies I've noticed are more flexible. Like they're like, yeah, because he is of that descent. Now, obviously, I understand that, if you are working on other projects in other languages, you may not be as so cavalier, but like, I'm just going to change it because you have no idea what the language is. But I think what you can do is just like try to see like the authentic, like there was one I was working on, it was like a Japanese TV show and I don't speak Japanese, but then I saw that the adapted line was like, it had like so many grammatical mistakes on it. And I was like, this is like unreadable. And so I'm not going to go and just be like, I'm just going to guess that that's what the person said. I said I would make a note to production. I'm like, what is the actual Japanese line for this? Because we need to translate this well. Otherwise, this is not going to make any sense whatsoever. So I think it's just like when you don't know something, and I know I'm in a journey of like, when you don't know something, sometimes I have a tendency where like I pretend I do know something and I make that mistake. And it's okay to not know it and just pass along to other production and be like, I don't know what's happening here. What is this? As opposed to what I see when I see mistakes being made from others where they just assume it and they just go, yeah, whatever, no one cares. And they just have that confidence of doing so. So I think with directing, it's just like it is important to have that authenticity, but also be humble enough to know when you don't know it and try to like, pass along to others and ask for help as well. So sometimes like, my Korean may not be 100%, but let's say my actor is native Korean and I'd be like, okay, I would love your input on this. And it's always good to get input from like get input from your actors too. And I know sometimes they're like, oh, directors, they're in this position. But I think to make a project really work is the collaboration between, your actors, your engineer, your producer who's hired you, who's overseeing the whole thing. And granted, not everything will work smooth. Some people might just be jerks, and some people will have a power trip, as anything we work in life. But I think it's like as the more we can have like a teamwork process and try to get the best product as authentic as possible, I think, I always think that it delivers a better enjoyment for the audience. Because it's just like, when we look at English dubbing from now to like what it was 20 years ago, there's a huge difference. It's like I see some not petition, like some people are like, I wish this could be redubbed, like this very popular anime or this TV show, because it was horrible. It was like, they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't care. And they would just butcher all these things left and right. So it's kind of like, it's great to see like the general audience actually tuning in and be like, yeah, this makes it better. Like the product is better, or like, certain mannerisms of like, for example, like Japanese or Korean shows, they're more theatrical like than American acting. American acting is for most parts very naturalized, kind of like that kind of thing. but when you see live action TV shows of those countries, it's more bigger. It's kind of like having actors who understand that, or like the culture nuances of what that language is being said. It lends to just like it feels right. And I think that's the change that we need to see, that not just of live action, but we see of animation, what Ashley is doing. Just like when you hire, like, obviously good, talented people, talent is good, but when you hire someone who gets it, it's like whether of that community, whether sexual orientation or ethnicity, they don't have to act it. You just know it. You see it in the audition room, as Ashley knows. And my experience in casting, someone comes into the room, whether to read for it or on camera or voiceover, and they're like, that's it. It's as like easy as breathing. And I think when you have authenticity in there, we have that. We have that ease. And I think it makes our lives easier and better, where we're like, oh, thank God. So I think that that's something I was trying. I do actually have a question for Ashley, because this is something that's been coming up, especially, and this is something that was brought up in the last panel, and I think JP Carlick of Queer Vibes brought it up. It's like when you have very complex identity roles, for example, let's say someone who is Latino, let's say Mexican, and the breakdown is Mexican and queer, or like Mexican and like disabled. Like they have like some sort of like, whether it be like a mental disorder, that kind of thing. It's like they're looking for that, or like someone who has like autism. When you cast those roles, and I know it's difficult because you have two very complex identities that needs to be fulfilled. Has there been times where you could only fulfill one and not the other?
Yeah, there have been. But it's not without me exhausting all of my options. I am a casting director that will deep dive through I'm a millennial, obviously, so I am really good at internet. And so like I will deep dive search for people that match that like certain identity or certain things. Maybe they're not actors. Maybe they're someone who is like in like a choir in the middle of nowhere, but it's like a specific choir. Like maybe there's like a Latino queer choir in like Ohio that I found via Google, and I will reach out and be like, hey, I have this role. Anybody interested? Like I would try to exhaust all of my options before that. But it's hard, right? And it's really doing your best, but also being aware of what would be the best for the project.
That is awesome. And I love how that tangent went through, Edward, and you were talking about shows that you looked 20 years ago that, you look at it going, oh my gosh, this is horrible and there's nuances missing. One of my favorite shows, and I watch it because it is so terrible, is the original Iron Chef out of Japan. I love that show. And I loved it before I was a voice actor, but now that I am a voice actor for several years, I'm sitting there watching going, what the hell is this shit? Who did they hire to do this? This is crazy to me, but I keep watching it because it's so terrible that it's amazing. Exactly. You look at it go, and I'm sitting there going, and because, I am one of those people that I watch, Japanese period pieces, and I love the theatric, yeah, the words are hard, y'all. Words are hard. I love the pageantry. There we go. We're going to put a word that I can pronounce today of it. And yeah, you do see me like, why couldn't they figure this out? And then I look at the credits and I look at who, was doing the dubbing, and it's someone it was a Japanese name. I'm like, you allowed this to happen? You allowed this to happen? But then I also realize, like you said, Ashley, like you said, Edward, there are more people involved and entities involved. So that way, the dubbing director may have wanted to do it one way, but the network that bought this said, no, you're going to anglicize it and it's going to be done this way. This is what we want. And so then you have that catch-22. Do I keep my job? Or do I push back and run the risk of not having a job? I've spoken up for it. I have my integrity, but I'm also now unemployed.
Or do you push back and you're like, all right, I'll give you an option of this, but also here's this person. Yeah. And you give them both. and be like, here's what you want, but here's something that's comparable.
Yeah, saying instead of
And
giving
or
them what
better.
they want, you give them what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. Well, this brings us to question and answer time. So everybody take a woosah moment real quick. Hydrate. And Ed, if you could open up the Q&A if it's not already open, that would be amazing.
It's already open, so just any questions you might have, just feel free to type in, and we
Yeah,
will
please do.
answer.
Because I'm looking at the number of participants and there are 31 attendees. And y'all mean to tell me of 31 of y'all, not Nan. This is where my Texas comes in, not Nan, one of y'all and Nan. Ain't Nan, not Nan, one of y'all got a question? We've been that thorough, because if we have, baby, we snaps to us. And that we've answered the things that have been burning on your minds or that you just been really wanting to ask. You can always ask your questions anonymously. Nobody sees the questions except for, the host and the panelists, so no one else will see your question. So if you're feeling, a little inside, it's okay. We won't judge. Questions. I've been asking all the questions, and Marcus and Edward have asked questions. Bring out to the panelists. Ask the question.
I have a question. How do y'all feel about, so when I was establishing myself, I had just gotten married, so I just changed my last name to my husband's last name, my spouse's last name. But when I started booking it, when I booked Ada, when I was hired on to Ada, I made the decision that I was going to start my career as Ashley Nguyen DeWitt, which had my maiden name, my Vietnamese, because my father's from Vietnam, maiden name in there. And I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys about just your names, and if you have culturally specific names, what made you decide to change and or not change when presenting yourself out there in the world?
I changed my name. So my full legal name is Tanesha Nicole Graham. I love my name. I mean, she who was born on a Tuesday, even though I was born on a Wednesday. I'm an early 80s baby where every Black girl's name pretty much ended with right? I have a cousin named Takesha, and then I'm Tanesha. I love my name. In corporate America, prior to me coming into voice acting, I was finding it very difficult, even with all the experience and the education and the languages I spoke, to find employment. And I was working in human resources at the time, and it was difficult. And so on LinkedIn, was before LinkedIn, I was having issues. I got laid off in a reduction of force, and it was just really, really tough. And I was getting rejected email after email after email for positions that I know that I was actually overqualified for, but I never got a chance for. So I changed the name on my resume from Tanesha Nicole Graham to the initial T, Nicole Graham. Resubmitted with a new email address, because who doesn't have multiple email addresses, right? Everybody got some aliases. I got a couple of them out there. And I submitted with a new email address, new profile, same resume. The only thing I changed was my email address and how my name was listed. And a couple of companies that had rejected me all of a sudden were clamoring at my door. And it pissed me off to the highest level of pissivity. And it hurt me. And I was angry. I said, not only is the company doing that, but on top of that, you work in human resources. You are supposed to know better. And then my naivete got the best of me and realized that sometimes people just are not good people. So even if you look me up on LinkedIn, I'm still T Nicole Graham. And because I do answer, I've always answered to Nicole or Nikki. In addition to Tanesha and T, only certain people can call me T though. And it's been rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's been rough. I know there are times when casting directors look over my auditions because my name is Tanesha. But I'm owning it. I refuse to change it. Again, either you want all of me or you get none of me. It's kind of where I am with it. And there's certain positions, certain roles that I really want, but I know are not going to come to me. And I said, what's for me is for me and will not pass me by. And if you don't want me at full 100% me, then I don't want you. But that's taken a lot of emotional maturity and a lot of crying and a lot of introspective and realizing that I am good enough regardless of what my name is listed as.
That was a great answer. You muted yourself.
See, there we go. I muted myself because I was getting a little verklempt. And I just put on full face of makeup because I got concealer and powder on for y'all. So I can't let that run because that's gonna look hella bad. Anybody else done any name changes before we move on to some questions that have come in?
I've been lucky enough to have a regular name. My mom is white black, and we're from Montana. So like, I'm the only black kid up there. Let's be honest, right? So my name is Jazzy Greene. My name was Jasmine Roos, and then my mom married my now dad and changed to Greene. So it's always been Jasmine Greene for me. I mean, the only other variant I ever grew up on was Jazzy. That's how my parents introduced me and was everything. And so that is one part of it I haven't had to experience, was just because of my name, to, just be based off that without ever seeing me or knowing who I am. So I feel for you, T.
I've thought about it, but haven't at the same time. My name is kind of a weird intersection where I personally don't know a lot of white Marcuses, but also then my last name is Rothenberg. And I think with me, people don't exactly know what they're getting when they just look at my name, period. And then I will say, me as a person, I mentioned earlier, I'm pale as shit. I have a lot of white passing privilege. And that also applies to in like the job world, not necessarily voiceover, but like in my day job, I work for the Illinois EPA. And on paper, they were like, Marcus, well, Rothenberg. Okay, this is obviously a white guy. And then I show up and they're like, well, kinda. But oh, okay, we'll hear him out. But weirdly, my name, I will say, gets a lot of anti-Semitism associated with it. You'll get a lot of those dog whistles where they're like, oh, well, you're a Rothenberg. Of course you would think that. I'm like, well, I think that because that's my opinion. It has nothing to do with my last name. What you said was actually anti-Semitic. And they're like, well, you're a Rothenberg. You'd probably think everything is anti-Semitic. I'm going to fight you. Wherever you live, I'm going to find you and I'm going to fight you. But it's one of those things where I've thought about changing my name, but then every time I think about it, I'm a very stubborn person as well. The stubborn part of me is like, no, don't give him that. Keep it. So
I think there was one point where I was considering changing my name to my completely Korean name, which so like in Korean, so Hong would be the Korean pronunciation, would be Hong, and then Sunghun. So then my Korean name, when you say it, would be Hong Sunghun. So then if here, my first name would become Sunghun Hong. That would be the name. So Edward was my legal name. That was my birth given name. And I remember there was a time, I think like maybe, during the whole Stop Asian Hate, I've noticed some people were like going back to like changing their name to reflect that. And I remember like, oh yeah, I want to do that. But then the bigger question was just like, I had to ask myself, while that is like the name that is my Korean name, it is not the name that I was raised with. And I have pride in being Edward and that kind of thing. It doesn't make me any less Asian or whatever, that kind of thing. So then I had to stop myself because it was like that sometimes you do things because it's like a bandwagon. Like, oh, everyone's changing their name, so I'm going to do that. But being who we are, and we talked about like whether like what is a Black voice, what is being Asian, that kind of thing. It is, you are not any more or less because of your name or because of what you look like. If you are like, so whatever identities that you contain, whether you are mixed race or that kind of thing, you are still that person. You are still Asian. You are still Black. You are still these identities. It doesn't make you any less or more. So I think I thought about it, but then I was just like, there's no need. And this also applies to adoptees as well, like especially Asian adoptees who don't have any Asian last names too. And they sometimes feel like I don't know if I feel Asian. And I would always say, well, you are. because you exist, and that is you are Asian. And I think we have to get rid of this monolithic mindset, like it only is this, and applies to sexual orientation too. Like, you know, I have had discussions where like people, Hollywood, for example, thinks that non-binary is this, or lesbian is this, or this. And it's just very specific mindset of like what they think it looks like. And it's hard when you try to work in this industry. Like there's one non-binary actor that I know that, you know, their agent told them, they're like, oh, you know, we're gonna have to drop you because you're not non-binary enough. And I was just like, oh my God, that's astounding.
You've heard me say it before. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it every chance I get. Non-binary does not mean androgynous. Stop fucking doing that. Sorry to interrupt, Ed. Keep going.
Oh yeah. So it's just like, I think it's hard when society tells you that this is what it's supposed to be like. And we've grown with, whether it be like image of our bodies, image of our orientation, our gender, our ethnicity, and they think that this is the way it's supposed to be. And if it's hard, it's like, you know, you try to live a life and everything tells you that you're not that. You're not Black enough. You're not gay enough. You're not any of this. So I think it's just like me just being like, I am Edward Hong, that this is me as a Korean American, and being totally okay with that.
Wish I was wearing my shirt that I wore the last one, but I am not.
I love that. Ashley, you asked the question and it allowed for us to be vulnerable. And I thank you for that. And I'm not going to get verklempt. I'm going to get a little teary, but I'm not going to get verklempt. It's this dichotomy of my name is Tanesha and I have an ethnic name, but then when I get the roles that are for Black women, oh, I don't sound Black enough. What in the frickety frack filth flarn filth is Black enough? What you mean Black enough? I am a beautiful Hershey Brown. Explain to me what Black enough is. I'm from 3rd Ward, the SWAT in Houston. What you mean Black enough? Explain this to me. But then of course they want sophistiratchet. That's what they want. They want sophistiratchet. Do I do ratchet things with my friends? Occasionally, yes. But I'm not always like that. So thank you for a question that was very poignant and allowed some other folks in the questions to come out and ask about names. So Marion said she got married in 2014 and she took her husband's last name. Her maiden name is Beale, which is an Irish last name, which happens with a lot of Black folks in America, that when our enslaved ancestors were free, they had their previous masters' last names. They don't know what their last names were prior to that because they were property and therefore they carried their last names. And so she has been mistaken for Hispanic, and she said, you know, she doesn't pretend to be, she doesn't play to be, but she wants to know, should she shorten her last name from Marion Toro to Marion T? Me personally, I'm going to tell you, forgive my language. No, don't forgive my language. I mean, all the level of this that I said, fuck no. For who? For why? to do what to who? To get acceptance from somebody? No, if they can't accept you for who and what you are, where you are right now, then maybe they don't deserve you. Move on.
If people are mistaking you for something, that's on them.
Yeah.
That's not your responsibility at all. Like if someone approaches you and I think you're X. If you're not, so what? And if they're upset about it, that's their problem. Yeah, you don't need to change yourself to cater to others. You're good as you are. So, and like with my father, Black man, his last name was McLean. Yeah, that man is not Irish. So yeah, I agree with Tanesha. For who?
No, my mom is Janice Nguyen and she looks like Tanesha. But so like, you know, like it's just never change yourself for someone else like that. It's not worth it.
So we have a couple of questions that have come in, and Edward, you touched on this. You said, you know, sounding Asian or sounding Black enough. And I know this has happened because we talked about it. But Varian asks, has anyone asked you to do a quote Asian voice when doing voice acting? They are Portuguese, Sri Lankan, Chinese, and that always short circuits their brain, they said. They speak Mandarin as a second language, you know, but still, it just like, I'm sorry, what? You want me to who? It's like there's a 404 error I'm sorry. What page not found? Explain.
I have a big gripe with when I see casting calls, voiceover and on camera when they ask for just generic Asian accent. They just say just Asian accent, and I think it's a very colonized mindset that they are lumping Asian into this because Asia. It's just astounding when every time I tell people like you do realize Asia is a massive, massive continent. It is, in fact, you know, if it wasn't for westernized forces, that kind of thing, Asia would not really be one continent. It's actually like several because they're so different from each other. Yes, there are common elements that bind together, but if you're going to talk about Southeast Asian and South Asian and East Asian and Southwest Asian, you have very four distinct identities. So it's like when someone goes, give me an Asian accent, there are two things that goes in my mind. One, I know what they're thinking of. I know because it's the mindset of most mainstream white people. When they think Asian, they just only think of East Asians. They think of Chinese, Korean, Japanese. That's it. They're not really thinking of Vietnamese. They're not really thinking of Cambodian or Laos or Indian or Pakistani or even Iraqi. They're not even thinking of those things. They're just thinking of those. And so and I've said this before, where it's just like, when it comes to white accents, they get very specific about that. They're like, give us a British RP, give us a Louisiana Southern accent, give us this. They're very specific with that because, I mean, for one, I would love to see a casting call, give us white accent, just a white accent. I feel like, yes, thank you. Just give us a white accent, but they don't go generalize on that. They will always go specific. So why they cannot do that with Asian? And it also applies to Latino accent because they're very, very different. South America has tons of countries, each distinct from the other. And a culture is very different from like if you're going from Mexico to Ecuador to Brazil, different, very different accents, very different people. But I think it's just like the mindset of just like, you know, they just generalize and clump it. So when they say, give us an Asian accent, one, I get very judgmental and I judge the project and I go, this project didn't do their shit. Like they didn't bother with it. So a lot of times when they said, I don't even do it. I just do whatever accent I want. I'll just talk like this. And if they go, oh, but we want that Asian, I'm like, then give me a specific accent then. Yeah. And then I also argue with you, is that accent necessary? Or is it like, and I've noticed this with like games or like TV shows where it's like it's that ethnic flavoring. It's like, ooh, they're that operative from Africa, or they're that operative from Vietnam, and that kind of thing. But they have no purpose in the story other than like, ooh, it's like exotic factor. So it's kind of like, you don't need to do that. Like if I see, let's say, a game where it's the operative is from like Vietnam or Korea, they don't have to have an accent. It's just when I hear their voice, I'm like, that's who they are. I don't need that extra accent to go, oh, they must be Vietnamese, they must be Chinese or Korean. That's not necessary. So I think for me, I groan at those. I don't do those. And if it's something that I'm casting, then I will try to tell the developer or the showrunner or whoever, be like, can we be more specific about this? Because right now this is so generalized. Yeah. And I think this day and age is like, the more specific we can get, the better. So that's my answer to that question.
Unless the role is culturally specific, as the culture or ethnicity is a plot point or motivation, there should be no reason to request something like that. Like, that's how I feel about it.
I'm with you. And this kind of goes into the next question. So we're talking about accents. What about when the auditions call for that standard American accent? He says, how do you think ethnic actors, people of the global majority who were born in the US but may have some ethnic flair or sound, he said, like those not having a standard American accent? I'm not even sure what a standard American accent is, because standard American, I mean, are they talking about, you know, mid-Atlantic? Are they talking about I mean, but what level of white? Because, you know, I can come from Louisiana and I sound like this here, yeah? And
yeah.
They want white men Western. They want white men. That's what I'm someone that sounds like they're from fucking Wisconsin.
I watched White Chicks recently. I don't know if anyone's watched that recently. But I assume that's what they're looking for.
That's
what I'm
They want a
hearing.
valley girl.
I
Like,
always
oh,
think of
what's
either
it
that
about?
or sorry to bother you with the
Or the-
customer
Yeah,
service
that's it.
voice.
Oh,
Put on your
yes,
white
That's
customer
it.
voice.
service
I
voice.
will, y'all. Okay, so this is an anecdote for when I was an assistant. I was speaking to an agent who made an off-color joke about Asians. Just it was like 2013, maybe 2012, and we were on the phone, and he just like made some just like it was like a microaggressive like throwaway joke, and I was like, you know, that I am Asian. Like we talk, we am all the time. My last name's Nguyen. Like, you know that, right? And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was just like, you also know I'm black too. Like, please just be aware of that. And honestly, like, I don't sound stereotypically either. But like, it's absolutely insane. Just the audacity of what people assume. But
Oh,
I would
people
say
are
if they say
acting.
anything about a neutral accent or conversational, just talk how you talk. Like how you
Don't
as a
say
person,
conversational. It's a trigger word.
yeah,
You
I'm
triggered
sorry.
both.
talk how you talk in real life, and that's fine. If they're like, well, that's not a standard American accent. I'm a standard,
standard
American.
American.
That's how I talk. So
Yeah.
that's a standard American accent. You
Yeah.
did it.
I think
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go.
Nope. Go ahead. You're good.
I was gonna say from the casting point of view, there's a part of me that I get why they want that. But there's also the much larger part of me that there are things that we don't need anymore. Like this notion of kind of like, how the reason why the term global majority was even coined was because of the mindset. It's like color still adheres to white being the universal standard. And that's why global majority was created, because the fact of the matter is most of the world is us. It's this room right here. We compose most of what the world is. And so with standard American accent, I think, sure, maybe like 100, 200 years ago when it was mostly white people, sure, standard American accent. But like this country, as time goes on, as we see, like there was that census by like 2040 or something, white people will be the minority of this country. That is the reality. And I guess that also explains why people are freaking out, because they're like, oh shit, we're going to be the minority. So what is the standard American accent then? If white people are the minority of this country. So I start to be like, my belief in terms of the project is that like, okay, look, if it is, let's say, if it's a show set in, let's say, Iraq, and someone's gonna do like a Louisiana Southern accent, I'm like, all right, don't do that, because that probably won't work for that. But I have actors who get ashamed, they feel bad about it. Let's say they're like, oh, they are from that region. Let's say it's like a dubbing project, a live action dubbing set in that Southwest Asian region, and they have a little bit of accent. But then like I've seen directors not accept them because they're, oh, but they're not standard American accent. But then I go, but they are from that country. Like it is literally what they are playing. Are they understandable? Yes, they are. So the only issue is not because they cannot be understood. It's because they don't have this Midwestern standard American accent. And I know there is a difference between someone who puts on an accent terribly and someone who is naturally that accent. And yes, there might be some people who are so damn good, they're like, I couldn't tell. There is that. But I think for the most part, we know it, we hear it. And so I think it's just something that needs to be considered, that the standard American accent, or even like my issues of like, when we see dialect coaches, they call it accent reduction. And I don't like that word reduction, because what are we trying, like, it's saying that your culture, who you are, is a problem, and we need to like subtract it. Like when we see like gay conversion therapy, it's like we need to remove the gayness from you. So it's like, why do we have this reduction, this standardized thing, because this all contributes to like why we have shame in who we are. For so many of us, it's that we have self-hatred for our identity, because society tells us that this is not the standard, this is not the right amount, so you need to be reduced. We need to reduce who you are. And so I think like I'm just going on a gripe about that, but I think you should have pride in, how you sound. And yes, some people might have issues, be like, oh, we can't cast you because you sound too whatever. But I think my big thing is, as long as people can understand you, that's it. That's the most important thing. If you want to work on other accents, great. But your priority is communication, because we are storytellers. If, as long as they can understand you, fuck them. Fuck whatever accent they think you have. Be proud of it. And so I think the whole standard American accent requirement is kind of stupid, but that's just me.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that I think honestly, at least in the character realm of voiceover, we should just normalize accents. Because if, again, going back to the ideal that if we fix these, this issue in production, in writing, where you adjust the character based on who you cast, it's not a problem, right? So again, America's this it's supposed to be this major, we're inclusive of everybody, everybody's coming in from other areas, overseas and everything like that. So it, not everybody's going to have this general, American accent. So why require that in your characters? I'm a firm believer that if there is a PGM specific character that is like, oh, this is specifically an Asian character. If you are if it's East Asian character, you're East Asian and you have a natural accent, use that natural accent. There's nothing to say that, okay, well, the requirement is it's an Asian character. It's East Asian and Southeast Asian. You have those natural accents. You should be able to use that natural accent for that character. To me, it doesn't make sense to be like, yes, this is an Asian character, but it has a general American accent or standard American accent. Why? Who's just like, why? It doesn't, that to me doesn't make sense. Even in the narration world, I think natural accent's fine too, as long as you're understandable, because you're relaying information, right? Versus you're playing a character, quote unquote. You got to relay information. It's got to be clear. It's got to come across. These people got to take in the information you're putting down. Okay, fine. But in the character world, it's open. It's completely open. You can't tell me that, okay, I'm gonna audition for this Black character, and you can't tell me that I don't sound Black enough, or that you need to not sound so Black. What? What are you, this is a Black character. I'm a Black person. I can play this Black character because I am Black. Be it if I do talk AAVE or if I don't, that should just be the way it is. So I say we should just normalize accents and character work should be completely normalized. That's just the way it is.
That, and I think what Ashley said earlier plays into this well, but just kind of on a different side of it, where if the accent doesn't add anything, why is it necessary? Why are you trying to shoehorn it? Oh, this guy, he's got to have an Asian accent. What does that add to the story? Why is that
it does
necessary?
though, because people have a tendency to want to classify things and put them in boxes so that they can feel comfortable with them. That's what it is. They want to be able to classify and say this equals this. And it's where we go back to we're talking about the monolith, and it blows their mind that not all Asian people sound alike. Oh, who would have thunk it? Not all Black people sound alike, and that African is not an accent. Africa is a continent.
Not a country.
Not a country, but a whole ass continent full of gloriously melanated people from north to south. African is not an accent. And you can't say all accents. We say, oh, it's going to be from South Africa. No, someone from Benin is not going to sound anything like someone who's from South Africa. Just no. Where's the little no? Edward, you should have the little no that you put on Twitter all the time. But Bugs Bunny just no. Jazz is going to do it. See, that one, no. A couple of things. This is one that came in anonymously, and I want to touch this one because I think there's going to be some polarizing answers on this. Should SAG, GVAA require studios and creators new and experienced to sign documentation that would hold their casting ethics accountable? I don't know. And then who's to hold them accountable? If they sign a document, then who's the governing body that does that?
Would it be SAG or whoever the union is would be the governing body of that?
I guess it'd be the governing body, but then there have to be a department that is doing audits of their castings and their casting calls. And so maybe somebody that drops in occasionally to their casting calls to make sure that they are on the right foot. I say if that happens, there is going to be some fisticuffs that are going to happen because some of these casting directors' processes are going to come to light and it's not going to be pretty.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's as black and white as just creating a document and signing it and like that is the standard. I think that there's a lot to go with it. Even in the process of authentic casting now, there's a lot of like legalese and like things that we're specifically allowed to say and things that we can and cannot say that would make us liable in any sort of discrimination. You can't specifically, I mean, for me, like I don't ever specifically request a type of actor. I will say this is a character. And I will send that to the agent, and it's within the agent's discretion to submit to me who they think authentically represents that. So like I'll be like, this is the character. And then I will call the agent and be like, ideally, I'd like to authentically represent like this character. And then it is up to them to submit to me who they believe authentically represents them. And it's also up to like the actor to submit themselves for what they feel they authentically represent or feel like they would be, you know, the right person to audition for that role.
I think that's a facet that we haven't touched. We've talked about casting directors and voice directors, but we haven't talked about the responsibility of agents when they're submitting talent and for the onus of the actor themselves.
Yeah.
Because we've been on Twitter and we've all seen it where there are cishet white actors that say, well, I don't care what it says, I'm going to submit for it because it's just a voice, and they do it anyway. And their agents, and sometimes let them do it. So then there's no gatekeeping there. It's holding people accountable. So I think it's more than just, like you said, it's more than just the casting directors.
Yeah. But really what it comes down to too is, as I said at the beginning, is I research actors. So like when I get who I get and I listen and I have my choices and my selects, I always do a double check. And I always do a due diligence. And if there's someone who doesn't match, I just know, I'll be like, hey, this is the person who auditioned. They, their audition was great, but know this. And just something that just so that they're aware of, and it's up to their decision how they want to move forward with that. But like me, since I started, and just because I'd been in casting for so long and seen different people's processes and just been in those rooms and been in those moments where I'm just like, that's not okay. Like I will always do my due diligence, which is why I love the PGM VO list, because you break it down for me. And so that like, I'm not trying to see if someone is like either Trinidadian or a Jamaican. Like I see specifically like what that is. Or you know what I mean? Like I think that eventually once we get to a place where processes start to be more leaning towards that way of like trying to really dig deep into authentic casting and like doing it right and doing the research, because a lot of it is like, as we said, it's me giving to the agents and the agents submitting who they believe and then the actor submitting if they believe, right? And then it also comes back to me and my job to just be that extra QC, just to be aware. And then with what I have, being like confident in my choice of like, this is who I believe like should be submitted for this, you know? And sometimes it comes down to it where I'm doing 4, 5, 6 rounds of casting on the same role, like, and it's just like not, but I will always try, like, I try my damnedest. So I mean, I can't speak for all casting directors, but in terms of like putting together like a rule book, it's
That is
so
commendable.
complicated.
That is commendable, and I can't speak for all casting directors because I don't know all casting directors, right? But this is the first that I've really heard of, you know, doing the research, making sure that you are trying to cast as authentically as possible, and then kind of holding, you know, the agents accountable, going, hey, you submitted this, but that's not what I gave you as my breakdown. And you're right, until there is parity, because I know folks will be like, well, why does it matter, you know, whether, until there is parity and there's equity, this is going to be the case. So I absolutely commend you, and I love that you do that. There's another question that came in. There's actually 4 questions that are here. So one of them is, what are the most surprising sources of resistance or challenge that you're finding when you're trying to cast authentically?
Agents.
I figured that's what the answer was.
Yeah,
I had to put it out there.
I mean, because again, I can only give as much information as I'm legally allowed to give to a certain point. And it is up to the due diligence of the agencies to know their people. But I also love the agents who do submit to me for like specific roles and be like, and will give me a little note on an actor being like, actually, this person is literally this description, just so you know. Or like if you're slating, being like, hi, I'm this person. Also, I really love this role because I am this. And then going to thing, I love that because I love to know who I'm reading, you know? And that's another thing, like with the name change thing, just kind of going back to that sort of thing. It's my job to research you. I mean, that's what I feel. Like, I feel like it's my job to make sure that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So like changing whatever your name is, like it's my job to figure that out. But also there needs to be something somewhere to tell me like that you are who you are, if that makes sense. So I think really what it comes down to is like not a lot of information. Some people don't like to give that, and I totally understand that. But just knowing that in terms of authentic casting, if I'm trying to be specific, I'm trying to be specific.
Yeah.
To the best of my ability.
This came up last time, and I don't know if the panel remembers when we were talking about casting authentically, and they were talking about a casting choice that had been made for, and I think it was it an indie game?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and they were looking for a trans actor for that, and the person that got the role, we assumed was not trans. And so there was this whole conversation around that. And like you said, maybe that person doesn't want to identify. And that's what ended up coming down to it, is that we were talking and said, maybe the person is trans, or maybe they're exploring what their identity is, and they weren't ready to put that out there yet. And nor do they have to, right? No. So then again, that's just something that came up last time. So it's dicey, and it's like you said, it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray area, and you have to be comfortable playing in the gray area. But I think you should be as close to one side or the other as possible, because my granddaddy always said before he passed, he said, don't straddle fences because you get splinters in places that you don't want.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. I've had many a production be like, Ashley, you're so pragmatic. Where I'm like, yeah, someone gotta be.
Yeah, I would have said thank you.
I'm like, someone's gotta.
You have to. I wanted to touch, I'm taking off my voice acting hat, I'm putting on my agent hat. I see it. I definitely see it. You know, the complication in authentic casting is that sometimes it's just not, you know, what's the word, like specified, that's the word, like it's not specified. So it's just like they don't let you know they're looking for something specific, right? And that's of course not the case with everyone across the board, right, with all clients and things like that. So I definitely see, and you're kind of like, well, this, you read the copy. As an agent, I will read the copy, be like, is this problematic? Is this a problematic script? Or, okay, hinting off of these, they're probably looking for this specific type of voice actor. So, you know, that can help. So a good agent should put in that work to be like, okay, well, they're not saying, so can I just send this to everybody? Or, okay, they want this specific person, I'm only going to send it to these people. So it's definitely, I think, bits and pieces of everybody.
Yeah.
That can make it so much easier in the process.
I will say there was, so when I was casting the Steven Universe anti-racism PSAs a couple years ago, there were like 4 PSAs that came out, and I was casting kids to be like these little kids who were like actors in this PSA, and then they like went on break, and then they talked about like the real shit. And then there was a character, it's a little girl, she's supposed to be a little African-American girl, talking about how like sometimes like when I'm in this situation, I feel like this. And it was like really speaking to like being an African-American, like female in this sort of, in this situation. And I got an email from an agent that was forwarded from a child actor and her parents saying, thank you so much for this audition. This is really, really important. I would love to audition, but I am mixed race, and I feel like I don't authentically identify with this script. But thank you for the opportunity. If there's any role that like is what I authentically represent, please consider me. But just saying, but like I got that email and I loved that. I thought that was so classy. Like I have that starred in my like in my emails from 4 years, 3 years ago, so that whenever I come across a character that would match that little girl, I would bring her in to audition for that. But it's like she was an actor who and her parents like took that moment to stand their ground in that sort of situation of like, this is how I authentically identify. Thank you so much for the opportunity. If you have anything for this, let me know. And she let me know who she was. So
yeah, I think that falls back, because I know we talked about it last panel, but like those checks and balances in casting a project or doing a project, if one person completely misses, like if the specs aren't specific, it's up to where does that audition go next, and going for that. And so we got somebody in the chain's got to do it right. Like even if we happen to miss it or, something happens, it comes down to everybody. It's a collective, it's a collective action or movement. And so.
And from the actor side, that's always going to look better on you. That's just sticking to your convictions and your morals. That's going to shine through. And Ashley just proved that exactly, where she remembers that little girl and her family, and she's got her stuff starred. And you know who I bet you don't have starred, Ashley, is whatever little white person was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I know I don't fit, but I'm going to do it.
White adult female playing the little black lady. Yeah.
Well, you do a little.
It's not like it would be the first time that it happened.
I'm speaking from experience, y'all. That wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
I've had experience especially in the on-camera casting, and I remember I was helping out, they were looking for a 13-year-old like Mexican girl, like someone who is Latino descent, preferably Mexican. And so, you had your submissions that would pretty much hit the ballpark. And then as I was looking through it, helping out this casting director, there was one particular submission that stood out, not in a good way. It was like this 50-year-old white dude. And I'm like, and he actually submitted his self-tape. He read the role of the 13-year-old girl, and I'm like,
to have the audacity of a middle-aged white man.
The caucasity.
The caucasity.
Please grant me the confidence of a mediocre white man.
Is this the new God grant me the serenity?
so this brings me to the point. I know for sure, and I think actually you can attest to it. In the state of California, I know for legality reasons, you cannot. I know we see casting that does break it,
Mhm.
but technically we cannot explicitly say we can only want this
No.
ethnicity.
You cannot
Yep.
request. You
Yes.
cannot request that.
You can
Title VII
suggest it.
is,
Like I know there was one casting call I did. We were looking for Vietnamese people. So what I wrote in was, we are striving for authenticity in casting and are looking for actors who come from Vietnam or have Vietnamese heritage, lineage, or Vietnamese family background. So we strive for it, we encourage it, but we can never explicitly say in a casting call, we demand or require it.
So I honestly, because I'm legal's always weird. I never put that in writing. It's always a direct phone call to an agent for me specifically, but I do say I am looking to authentically cast this role. If you want me to further explain what that means, I can.
yeah.
But that's a phone call, and that's me calling like
Yeah.
between all the different things, but being like, hi, so nice to meet you via phone. Like, please say, it's like an all day thing of me being like, I sent you this. This is what I mean.
Yeah. So this is Tanesha taking off her moderator HR hat and put her HR hat on. For anybody, our folks, this has to do with Title VII. Now, California has always been its own beast when it comes to compliance and legal, when it comes to hiring and contractors and so forth. So this goes into Title VII. Is why you cannot explicitly say you're only doing this, because then with Title VII, it says you're discriminating against other people who are unprotected classes.
Well, I would say, again, it all starts in the writers, right?
Right.
Include, if you're looking for specifics, include it in the character description.
That part.
That's the way to, it's like, if it is a specific thing, put it in your character description.
Yep.
Johnny is a 7-year-old African-American boy.
That's the workaround for Title VII.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jane is a Dominican 15-year-old non-binary, this is who the character is. And it's up to the due diligence of you as an actor and your agent and all the people that get you to the audition point. So
I didn't know that, actually. That's really good to know when you write it as the character, like description.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really good.
Like, she's blah 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 blah. She's also wacky and quirky and got all the things. But if you're being specific in that way, if it's something where you want to be specific, being like, this little girl is this.
Yeah. And that gets you, and that way no one can say, oh, you're discriminating against me because I'm white.
No.
That's not actually.
I'm authentic. I'm looking to authentically represent what this character is. This character is this.
So I'm glad you said that. Y'all have just been teeing me up, because one of the questions is, what are examples of PGM characters that you each want to see developed?
Indigenous is the top of my list.
It's already happening.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful, and I want to see more of it in a what's the word, like a
non-reservation setting, that kind of
biased,
this is what you think, and like this is what you think, not in like the old whatever Western times when they were savages or things like that. You know what I mean? Like I want to see the tropes, the trope, like just completely breaking all of those. Indigenous is at the top of my list. Outside of that, I think it's pretty much general, like PGM across the board that don't fit into those specific. These are what these PGM are, and even LGBTQ. I would love to see a gay couple story, rom-com where it's not the man the love interest isn't a straight man and they're in secret. They're having a relationship in secret. I would love to, you know, like that's what I'm saying, you know, like it's just like Black movies not rooted in Black trauma. Indigenous people that are on the reservation, they're out in the world and they're all doing great things. Like I just want to see more of that.
Rom-coms with people of color and of different genders, identities, different sexual orientations that don't have happy endings.
Oh, God.
Where both of y'all are toxic as fuck.
Yes.
And y'all both realize y'all toxic and y'all both sitting there at the end of the movie looking at each other going, you know you ain't shit, right? You ain't shit.
That'd be a great preschool
Popcorn.
show.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think mine is probably more about more of the tropes I want to see broken.
Okay. Yeah.
In these diverse communities.
Non-white centered mixed race character.
There is more mixed than just Black and white.
That's it.
I was just thinking of that. So I was at Comic-Con and seeing all like the new shows that are coming up and like things are happening, and it's like we are seeing more like diversity. Like, okay, like if it's a romantic couple, still very heterosexual based, but romantic couples where it's like one person is global majority, but then the other person is always white, whether it be a white woman or a white man. And so it's kind of like I think it's weird. It's like, oh, we're gonna give them a chance, but we still want to have it centered in like the mainstream standards so that people won't get so alienated, because it's always that thing when you have too many global majority, it's no longer it's a movie, it becomes it's a movie about people of color. It's like, okay, come on. So I think what Ashley was saying is seeing more of that would just be great.
Yeah. I mean, there was that Pixar short, the dancing Pixar short, where literally they look like my parents, down to the mole and the glasses, like Black woman, Asian man, like dancing around, and they literally just look like my parents.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
there was
just
a show on Netflix like that. It was a show on Netflix, but is she the female character? And it's a rom-com. The male character in the relationship is Indian, and the female character is Nigerian, and they're getting married.
That's the movie I was thinking of. What's the name of it? Because
I don't
I've
remember
been
the name of
looking
it, but
for
I
it, so
absolutely
watch it.
loved it because again, you have this mixed race couple that is not centered, it's not centered with a white lens.
Yeah.
Even then, like especially like what is it, Lovebirds with Issa Rae and
Camille.
Right now. Yes, like that you see so many of those couples in real life, and to actually finally see them, it's wonderful. And speaking of the gay couple, I watched Single all the way last night. Was not disappointed.
Good.
I recommend it. It's on Netflix. the romantic comedy best friends trope, and it was wonderful. It was great.
We have 2 minutes left. I do want to get a snapshot of all of us smiling, yay! Since Ashley, you were here with us, you took time out of your day to sit and have this really important conversation with us. I want to leave you with the last word.
Oh no, why?
Because you're insightful. And again, you've pulled out some things, even for me personally, that I'm in a little bit of my feelings about. I'm about to go and ruminate about that with my therapist this week.
I mean, I will say, look, I started 2010 as a 20-year-old intern working in an all-white office. And I've always wanted to be a director. Like, that's something that when I got into voiceover, I would think I'm going to be a voice director. This is what I want. And I grinded, and I didn't really care about being glossy or like dampening myself as like a person of color. Like I've always unapologetically been like who I am in my identity around everybody. And like I would say find the people who are willing to champion you and find like the community that is willing to uplift you and not compete against you. Because once you find those people, you're good, you're golden. And know that it takes time. It took me about 12 years to get to this specific place, and it's going to take time, but that doesn't mean that it's unattainable or out of reach, whatever it is.
And that is a beautiful way to end. It is 7:59. It is right at 8 o'clock. Awesome. So I would love to get a photo of us. So if you get, Jazzy, fix your face.
Oh,
Fix your face.
I was trying to find a
No.
Wakanda picture to put in the background, but I couldn't find one. And so I was like, I don't know what meme I want to ruin this picture with. This is
Yeah. Oh, yes.
That works. All righty, everybody, if you're ready, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. And we'll take one more. You can do whatever you want. Perfect. Thank you all so much to my panelists. Thank you so much for those of you who came in and listened and sat for 2 hours. I hope that you got as much out of it as I know that we did. We'll catch you on the flip side next month. Be looking for that update coming soon. But again, thank you all so much. Have a wonderfully productive week. And as Jazzy says, happy booking.
happy book.
Bye.